The church was the product of a viral story. All of these social, political structures were against this story spreading, yet it did. And I don't think that they don't have an interesting story to tell us, that they don't tell the interesting story that they have.
Ministries media is an invitation. It's an invitation in, or to return, or to continue a conversation where you can be an oasis that points to God in a wasteland of content.
So, we're talking about story. Okay, so about 25 years ago, my company decided that, they literally said this. They said, Matt, we need 300 more of you. Like, that sounds horrible. But what they wanted is they were going to put me in charge of training the new computer programmers. And they wanted people, whatever. So they said, well, we need you to become a teacher. So they sent me to Canada to do that, which is weird. It was Toronto in January. And so I got this hotel. They got the hotel for me, off the lake. And so the first day I go to class, and I walk a little over a mile on the streets, and nobody's there. So I go, I'm in there. I'm kind of early, because where I live, we're always early to everything. I'm kind of early, and I'm in the bathroom trying to get the color back on my face. And I'm complaining to people, are you okay? Like, I walked here. Where is everybody? Like, oh, it's Toronto. There's an underground town. You're like 3 Starbucks away from the hotel. Like, that's how they measured that place. How many Starbucks? Like, oh, okay. So then that night I walked up on a really cool restaurant. I still wish there was another one like it. And then, okay, so then the next morning, Tuesday morning, I'm walking down. That's great. Then Wednesday morning I'm about to go walk underground, and the guy goes, sir, I got your limo. I'm like, what do you mean you got my limo? I was like, well, it came with your room. Like, a limo came with my room? Like, did it come with the room the last 2 days? It's like, yeah, you kind of just walked right past me. Like, oh yeah. And so the rest of the time, I got a limo. I mean, and it wasn't like super stretched, but it was not just a Cadillac. It wasn't an Uber. It was a little short limo. I'm like, oh. Okay, so at the end of the week of training and being a teacher, I got most improved, which had a lot more to do with how bad I was the first time than I was at the end. But I had this thought of like, was that here the whole time? I actually felt that way 2 weeks ago, again. So one of the things I teach is AI. And I use a lot of AI. And I'm also super cheap. So with ChatGPT, I have 6 Gmail accounts. So I'd use ChatGPT, and when it says there's no good, I'd go to another one. ChatGPT is like 10 minutes now for free. So I'm like, I got to figure out which one I'm going to pay for. So I'm going to try ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and Gemini. So I'm on Gemini, like, this looks good. It's kind of connected to some other Google stuff. And why does that say Pro in the corner? I'm like, wait a second. I pay extra for Google storage. I've been paying for this the whole time. Has this been here the whole time? Okay, so first we're talking about story. I got to start off with a story. What was the point of that story? So as a teacher, we live to see the light bulbs go on, the aha moments. I hope you get one of those. That'd be really nice. And if you smile really big, I hope it's that and not just something goofy I did. But in this, I want you to look for something else. I also want you to look for, it's been here the whole time. Sometimes we just need to be reminded of what we already know. And talk to one person even has a degree in film. Other people are artists. Other people are doing audio ministries. So not everything's going to be new. Not everything's going to be new information. Some of it will be, this has been here the whole time. That is a type of light bulb. So connected by story. Using ministry. So I have 3 topics, which is, I'm speaking 3 times, I have 3 topics, right? So what are the topics? They are media, story, and community. So there's a who, what, where, when, why type situation. I'm going to start off with community and say, I think there's a huge opportunity for the church. Or the church is not doing something right. Either way, we'll get to that. So there's community. It's needed. We'll get to that really soon. I believe the solution is largely in story, and that can be shared through media. Also, media, technology can and tends to separate people. And a lot of people would view it as something that destroys community. I'm saying, well, it's here. We can't really avoid it. How can we use it to build community. How can we use it for better? Technology in general, it's not really technically neutral, but a lot of technology can be used for very good, for very bad. I had my students, one of them's right here, we went to Germany about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4, and one of the places we went to was the Gutenberg Museum, disruptive technology, the printing press. Well, the Geneva Bible was built on a very similar printing press, and later my Kampf was built in a printing press of some sort. That technology is used for very good and very evil. Technology tends to be like that. So media, I believe, can be used for very good and can be very evil. There's a lot being written about screen time, social media, and soon it'll be AI, and how that has destroyed a generation. That's absolutely, if you ever read the book, The Ancient Generation, it's amazing, it's sad, it's really sad, but it's true. Let's go to the other side. How can we use this stuff for good? It's there, people are using it, and it's available to us. Media technology. I have a friend, he works for an organization related, it's a subsidiary of Wycliffe. They are translating Bibles in Nigerian, boom, 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 because of technology. Growing up, there was a missionary in our church who was in Papua New Guinea. She spent decades to get the New Testament. No, not the New Testament, the Gospels. Now they're doing that in months, not decades. So yeah, it goes both ways on technology. So that's, the first one I'm going to talk about is community. Okay, now my least favorite topic, at least in presentations. I do have to introduce myself a little bit. I went to those schools. I'm EIU, just down the road. That's where I did undergrad. Doubled in business computing and computational mathematics. So both software development, but one was from a math degree and one was a business degree. I went to Concordia to study technology and education together. The school I teach at is, most teachers have a master's in the field and a master's in education. I decided to combine them. Went to Northwind's Theological Seminary. I studied, well, like Monty said, education, but I focused on flourishing modernity, which included media, AI, and stuff like that, and storytelling, and actually humor too, which is not a funny topic to study in education. I was funnier before. I had to read all these cases of teachers losing their jobs because they tried to be funny. I studied more about the law. It wasn't great, but it was still very useful. I did go to Illinois Central College, that was fun. And I went to Marquette and studied machine learning and AI. So that's the education background. Teacher, I'm like a super weirdo. In the same year, I taught in seminary, college, and high school. That's not normal. This year, I'm teaching college. I'm actually program lead web and software development. Been teaching web since the late 90s, web development. And I'm the program lead for that, but I not only teach one class in that program, I'm all AI now. So I'm the primary teacher in the AI program, and we're kind of leading the region in AI education. Enough about that. So the ministries I've been involved in, there's a school across the street from my house. It's so cool that it's a Lutheran school ministering to the inner city of Milwaukee, and it's all young men from the city. And Monty's actually been there for lunch with the guys. It's a very different experience. I bounced these presentations off them. I hope it goes better than it did with them. There's some things they did not. I found out one class, none of them went to church. Like, oh, well then I don't care what the church is doing right now. Also, I'll talk about OM, and I'm also involved in the church's youth ministry. And that's, okay, little media. I use a little bit of animation there. I'm not doing that again because I'm not talking about myself again. So, I'm starting off at the bottom and work our way up. Anybody familiar with this? This was published by the Surgeon Journal. It was pretty significant research about the loneliness epidemic. I'm really sad that we've stopped that conversation for now because it hasn't gotten better. Obviously they were like, COVID just happened. How are people doing? They realized bad, and they weren't doing that well before, and things got worse. I pulled some things out that I thought were the most interesting of this. Said one out of half the adults said, I'm lonely. In research, I'm lonely. Straight up, call me lonely. These are the things they've discovered, identified actually, that loneliness causes. Heart disease, dementia, stroke, depression, anxiety, premature death. How much? The same as 15 cigarettes a day. which that's like, whoa. I mean, anybody my age would know people who died of lung cancer. And we're gonna die. We're gonna know people die early from this. Lots. It's sad. There's more. Trust in others has gone down 45 to 30. I bet you it's like 25 now or 22. It's not better. I'm pretty sure that's true. 1/3 of our time engaged with other people, and 70% reduction for kids in time with their peers. And some of that time, I'd be curious to explore, are they counting online time? I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I'm curious. Is of that time that's 70% less, some of that's still not in person when that would have always been in person. Well, that's not true. People used to hang out on the phone for hours. And they get the wires twisted. Yeah, so it's not a conversation. That did exist. Let's not forget that. Another single person households has been increasing. Not that that's bad, but it's part of things they discovered. Family size and marriage, we know that's all going down. And this family size is interesting. Religious affiliation in organizations has been plummeting. Attached to the local community, 16% said they were attached to the local community in 2018. In 1900, it would have been like 85%. And you go back 1,000 years, it would have been everybody. Because they had no choice. That was life. Now it's 16%. One last slide of these, and then we'll talk about where we go from there. 6 hours per day average on digital media, but 1 in 3 adults said it's always. And that, I believe. Now, like I said earlier, technology can build relationships. And I have examples about relationships I have that are only through technology. I got some very close friends in Bangladesh that I have never met. And don't know if I ever will. Because they can't get a visa here, and I'm not going there in the summer. It gets down to like 85 degrees in January. They don't want to tell me it's like in June. So this is kind of a bleak picture. That's where we're at. That's the world we live in. We're going to take a step in a different direction a little bit. There's anthropologist Robin Dunbar. He went around the world and he tried to figure out about people and their relationships. And this is what he found around the world. That pretty people around the world, different cultures, tend to have 5 very close relationships, 15 good relationships, strong, well, maybe bad relationships, but 50 that are really close, 50 they consider friends, 150 that you could call them both ways, and then at least 500 acquaintances. Now I bounced this off the high schoolers, and they're like, oh, I'm lucky to have 1, 3, 20, and they thought these numbers were huge. Like, okay, you are in high school. You'll meet more people. But then I bounced off some other people, and pretty much anybody I bounced it off in the Midwest thought these numbers were very high. What do you guys think? High, low?
It's pretty high.
Pretty high?
High.
Okay.
Is high.
Around the world, this is what he discovered. In fact, so much, he's not the only one who's discovered it. There's actually theories that the human brain evolved to the state that it's in to accommodate this. That this is how humans work. Yet, everybody I bounced off said these numbers are really high. So the question is, should those numbers not feel high? And I don't know. But I think when it comes to relationships and community, I think most of us are settling for less than we should be. And that's us. And we're here. So we're probably in better shape than most people. And they are dead. So the wide audience, not just the wide population, they absolutely are settling for less. So, my other question is, what's the church going to do about it? That's the whole reason I went through all that sad stuff, to get to here. I don't like to make people sad. Sometimes students cry in my presentations, but not often. Monty knows what I'm talking about. Try not to. But what is the church offering? And when it comes to that, if you were to ask your friends who don't go to church or acquaintances that don't go to church, what do you think the church is offering? They're probably not going to say what we wish they would say. So does the church have a better story? Because a couple slides earlier, I said organized religious affiliation has been plummeting. Now, there are some people who think it's leveled off. Hopefully that's true. And if you look at demographics, if the most churched generation is dying off and it's leveling off, that means somebody's increasing. That's just how numbers work. So it may not be 100% bleak, but we are not in a good place. I think that's still fair. So does the church have a better story? Here's the story. Well, an author that I got this from said, and I truly believe it, so I'm going to share it, that here's the story most people hear from the church. Most people say, okay, here's what the church says. Here's how you behave. You know what? And if you're going to be here, you're going to have to believe this stuff. And maybe we'll show you the secret handshake someday. That belonging is dependent on your behavior and your belief. So maybe not that it's so linear as I just described, but I think most people who aren't part of a church, or maybe they are part of a church, believe that for them to belong, it's built on these two. Is that fair? Am I being unfair? Okay. So if I look at Scripture, if you look at early Acts, these things all happen so fast. I really couldn't. It happened in hours. They went from believing all their behavior, which I don't love that word, but all the behavior is based on their faith, and building a community in a very short amount of time. That's absolutely, so second chapter of Acts, fourth chapter of Acts, I don't really get a model there because it happened in hours and days, not over time. But what do I see in Scripture? Things like love one another, bear one another's burdens, be hospitable. And I just love this verse. It's one of my favorites. Stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as in, talk about community. Honestly, they actually didn't know what they believed at first. Paul's writing letters like, guys, you missed this, you got this wrong. It wasn't built on from the beginning from a strong doctrinal understanding. It was built on faith, but not necessarily a strong doctrinal understanding. But the love was there, the community was there. They were serving together, and they were there for each other. I think it'd be nice if this is what people thought of the church, that you could be wrong. You know what? If you become part of a community, you'll probably appreciate the same things they have, and you'll probably end up believing similar to them. And I put behave in quotes. What we might consider behavior comes out of this, not in reverse. That's what I'm promoting. That's kind of what I'm trying to describe. So hopefully that is well received. But when I say there's an opportunity for the church, I describe this very negative situation of the loneliness epidemic, which is absolutely, we all see it, I hope. I think the church is the answer. I'll give you an example of where I really see it in my community. Monty lives really close, so it'll be his community too. Will's out in the country, I don't think it's the same there. And Kim lives in the same house as me. So what I see in my community is we have coffee shops everywhere. They're fantastic. We have a lot of, after Seattle, Milwaukee's up there. And in Milwaukee, we're the suburb for coffee shops. I mean, every half mile is an independent roaster. They're roasting it there, and people travel to be there. But why? There are a lot of people, especially creatives, who work entirely online. And if they weren't at a coffee shop, they would see no one in person. So there's this idea of a third space. There's a lot of people, a lot of my students don't have a second space. I literally have half my students in some of my classes are in the bottom bunk of their bed. I don't know if they leave that room much. I hope. Yeah, it just is. So you hear people write about needing a third space. Not everyone even has a second space. There's the home, work, third space. Now, if you're working at your home and you don't have any involvement, you don't even have a second space. I think the church should be, and this church, we're right in the middle of a community. Seems like a community church. I was talking to Twin City Bible Church. Just like our church, they built, boom, they only have 10 parking spaces. They're in the community. They're in a community, trying to be that for that community. And I think the church needs to find a way to be that for their congregation and for hopefully their future congregation. And also to minister to people who may not be their congregation. One thing our church, the three of us go to, takes really seriously is, well, we have more than 10 spots. We are in the community, so we do not have the spots that we have. We try really hard to minister to the neighbors because we know we annoy them. And so we try really, really hard. Like one thing we did a couple years ago is we stopped having a slide down a hill into the street. Some of the neighbors just did not like that. It was pretty crazy. I'm sure our insurance guys, if they ever saw it, wouldn't like it either. Did you ever see it?
No, I didn't.
It was insane. We had this really steep hill.
Oh man.
Yeah. So
you did have to put signs up so that they didn't slide down that hill, though.
yeah. Yeah. So, but we give gift baskets. We try to minister to the community, and not that they're all going to become part of our church, but we do care about what story our church is telling the community, what story people are telling about us in the community. All right. So, I believe there's an opportunity for the church to provide a community to those who don't have one, which is a lot of people. Why do I think stories related to community? I feel like this. The church was a product of a viral story. No two ways about it. There's this thing called a meme, and almost nobody knows what it actually is. It is. My daughter's actually. It's kind of embarrassing. Like I had to study the math on this, but before I studied the math on this, my daughter's told me a meme is not a picture with words on it. Like it's not. Like no, it's a message that moves in a certain way. Like, are you sure? And then I was in a class, and it's really a crazy class, and we had to do the math on memes. It actually came from a book in the early 80s called The Selfish Gene by, I think it's Dawkins. And he has an interview of describing it, but fascinating book. And he described memes as communications that are like genes and how they mutate and how some mutations last and some mutations don't. So a meme is, a lot of people are putting words on pictures, and some of them aren't shared and some of them become viral. And the math behind that is memes. And the math is called mimetic. I can't even pronounce it. And it's not easy. That class. I hadn't taken math in like 30 years, so I'm watching YouTube videos of linear algebra from that I had last seen in the 80s just so I could do this class. It was crazy, but we were studying the math behind memes, viral story. The church was a viral story. Peter told it. Thousands of people, then the next, Philip told it. Thousands of people believed, and then boom, it spread across the world, even to India, Africa, Northern Europe. Very, very quickly. And unlike other religions, it was, at least not for the first 500 years, was not pushed through the sword. It was actually suppressed by the sword. Anybody says, like, guys, the sword tried its hardest to stop this story from spreading. 300 to 500 years of significant persecution. All these social, political structures were against this story spreading, yet it did. But the story that we're telling is not spreading. And we need to look into that. Now, communities have always been built on story. So let's just take Moses as being the author of the first 5 books. Let's say that's the way it was. He didn't witness most of it. It had been a story that was passed generation to generation that people knew. Only did he not witness it, he wasn't raised with that story. He was raised in Pharaoh's court. He wrote it, he may have studied it, but it was not a written story, it was spread through story. Now, something about story. Stories are always, no, true stories are always partly false. True stories are always partly false. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of things happen, and we only tell the details that we need to tell, which means we're skipping a lot of stuff. Why? Well, for time, and to get our point across, which makes the story not exactly what happened. And that's always how it's been. But communities have always been built on story, and that's actually probably what they did after working all day. Told stories, or stared at the fire, or built something, but that still worked. Now, I said communities are built on story. Why? Because stories, by design, can build trust. Now, I read some places that stories do build trust. I do not agree with the author. I've heard stories that did not build trust. I have heard speakers tell stories like, so you're a jerk. Anybody ever heard someone tell a story and now you thought less of them? Yeah. So, I don't agree with very well-respected author. He said stories build trust. Like, no, stories give me opinion on whether or not I will trust you, but it doesn't always build trust. And actually, I think there's quite a danger. Two biggest dangers in storytelling and a little bit in humor. So self-deprecating humor is the safest kind of, because you're less likely to get sued by anybody, or have a student complain and then you have meetings. You don't make fun of other people that are in the room or someone they care about. But self-deprecating humor has the risk of losing credibility. Now, if you do it right, you share humbleness. You share you can build trust through self-deprecating humor, or you can separate yourself from your audience or your students in self-deprecating humor. And stories like that too. So I read more than one book that just story builds trust. Not always, but it can build trust. And it can very, very much build trust. So the next slide's going to go about trust, but it's going to seem to go in a different direction. So I'm going to dip into my web development background. Websites, it may just be a tool to use. And where I used to work, we made the first website for a bank, and our websites were very effective, and they weren't really interesting because, it was a bunch of numbers. And if the numbers are big for you, then you probably enjoyed it more than if the numbers were small or in red with negative lines. But we built those kind of websites. But as I became an educator, I got more involved in websites for much more exciting reasons. Selling your brand, selling your product, selling yourself, sharing your stuff, stuff like that. Now, in the process of that, if you really dive into selling your brand, you start learning about ways that another related topic, you heard of the topic of gamification. So that's big in education. So what they did is, hey, in video games, there's people who play video games so long they die there. Literally, when the Olympics was in Korea, they had a moment of silence for those who died playing video games. It takes about 3 days of no water or eating, and it happens, especially in Korea. It's a thing. So, that's the thing. And we look at that, they were motivated to play this so much they die in it. We can't get our students to read a textbook. So, it's called gamifications. How do these video games motivate, and how can we implement that in the class? And some of it I consider immoral. Some of it a lot of motivation's immoral, and there's the thought of violence, that's immoral. And the gamification can cross a line, but also it's legit to look and say, how do you motivate? And what you discover is game developers, big in Vegas, Facebook, social media, hired neuropsychologists to help them figure out how to addict people to stuff, how to motivate people to stuff. And Facebook literally hired psychologists from Vegas and brought them to Silicon Valley to help them get addicted to the feed. And that feed, the guy named Tristan is the guy who came up with the ability for a web page to refresh without refreshing everything, the continuous feed. Well, I actually talked to him a couple times. He feels like Oppenheimer when he made the bomb. He feels like he owes billions of people his lives back. So he started an organization called Center for Humane Computing. And they made the documentary, The Social Dilemma. That changed my life. When I watched that documentary that night, I researched it and I applied to be in a discussion group, and I, for several months on Friday mornings, was on it wasn't Zoom, but a Zoom call with Tristan and the other people discussing things. So there was like 6 or 10 educators, and there was government workers, and then there was business people, and there's a lot of people from Silicon Valley. It was super weird. We started every meeting with a 2-minute moment of silence with a gong. The beginning and the end. It was really weird. And then they're like, Matt, we need to know what Midwesterners think. I can't represent half the country, but whatever. And then I did. But in that process, you start finding out how much they focus on intentionally causing other people to produce dopamine. And you hear about it all the time. And the goal to get people is you want them addicted to the dopamine rush, and you hear about it all the time. I am not promoting stories telling and crafting. I'm going to talk mostly about story crafting, not telling so much, which is similar, but that produces dopamine. It's not that hard. We're going to talk about stories that produce oxytocin. I had to go to a page and have it play over and over so I can pronounce that right. I think I got it right. Because in my mind, I switched these. I always think it's toxin, but no, it's oxytocin. So some people call it the cuddle chemical, or it is the love hormone. Now, there's a lot of research on this in storytelling. They literally take a blood draw, tell a story, and take another blood draw. Which is the fact that you're poking them twice going to change their chemical makeup? Because it sure would change mine. They say they work through that. But there's been a lot of. They also do it with saliva. They've done a lot of research on storytelling and this. So what is oxytocin? Oddly, it's part of what they give someone who needs to deliver and it's not happening. It's also someone they would give a mom who needs help lactating. Like, okay, what does that have to do with story? It is the chemical hormone that's related to trust. Which I think is fascinating that is also the one that causes childbirth and lactation. It is the hormone that they associate with trust. And it is a hormone that can absolutely be produced by hearing a story. Under certain circumstances, which we'll be talking about mostly in our next section. So we are not going to craft stories to give a dopamine rush or an adrenaline rush, which is what they were talking about 20 years ago. Maybe your story will be exciting. I'm going to talk about crafting stories that will build community by building trust. Some of the ways that happens. First of all, the story has to have tension. No, we're going to call it other things later, conflict. But the story has to have tension to build this trust. Otherwise, there's really nothing there to build the trust. So a story has to have tension to build the trust. The listeners they found have to get to the main character to build trust. Now, there's good stories where the main character is just observing everything, and there are ways around that. What they found is it is the connection to the main character that is the easiest way to build the trust of the oxytocin. And it also has to keep their attention. So stories that lose attention do not build the oxytocin. So if you have a very boring story and you do not get their attention, you're not going to build this. Another thing, and there's a lot of other research on this, when you got a group of people who are sharing emotion, their behaviors tend to line up. Have you ever been somewhere where they get the whole crowd excited and they start doing things they wouldn't normally do? That is actually just how humans work. It just is. And you got the characters have to fix the tension. That's fine. And oxytocin does produce a trust between the storyteller, not just the story content. And if you're a storyteller who has a great story, but for some reason you tell it, you just come off as someone they don't want to trust, the content doesn't matter. They're not going to connect. So it is not just the story, content is the storyteller. And there's research on that, that identifies that. Did it all make sense? Okay. So, yeah, I know, I'm telling all these weird little stories, and now we're talking about hormones. But, okay, so when you're writing stories, some authors say that all stories do this. I'm saying let's write stories. Wait, one thing I'm not going to get into in the next section, because we're going to craft stories in the next section, talk about crafting stories in the next section. I'm not going to identify what's a story and what's not a story. We're just going to craft stories that do what we want, that have the effect we want. So that is another field. I have 2 experts in that field, and they would teach it a little differently because they have a different goal. My goal isn't to say that's a story, that's not a story, and there is value in that, but that's not what we're going to do. We're like, let's do what we're doing in an effective way, and hopefully to get people into community, hopefully to get people to find what's missing. The idea is, why trust? What's the good in trust, and what does trust come with community? We're going to want to tell stories that sway people. Sway them to something. Now, some will say all stories are meant to sway, or what's the point? So, you often when I do travel with students, the students go out, they have a little adventure, and they tell me something. How do they choose which thing to tell? Well, they probably, some students know not to confess all crimes, but they're still going to tell a story that's interesting. They're going to sway us to believe that they had a good time, that they experienced something worth sharing. They experienced something that was worth the stress of when are they coming back? So there's all these things that happened. Which story does someone choose to tell? The ones that will sway them in some direction. Now, sway comes from building emotion. Emotion is based, the word is built on the word motion. Sway is to move, motion is to move. Emotion is motive, it's to move. They are tightly connected. So if you have a story that has no emotional connection, so let's say there's a conflict, but nobody would ever care. Yeah. Those 2 ants really don't get along. But no one knows what they're saying or really know anything about them. No, maybe they do get along. No, that's not going to sway anybody. There's no connection. So we need story. We're going to tell a story for a reason, to sway. That means we're going to move them. We want to build a community. We want to sway people from believing that the church only offers behave. You can't do anything fun that you think is fun. The people here go and they sing songs they don't like, and then they do everything they're told. Like, no, none of that's the true story. No church is succeeding if all 3 of those are true. So we need to have them hear a different story. We need to move them from believing one thing about the community that hopefully the church is offering to what hopefully the church is offering. And what is the church offering? Hopefully, this Greek word, how do you pronounce it, Money?
Koinonia?
Sure. Yeah. No, just tease. This is what the church should be offering: fellowship, communion, sharing, unity, things that humans desire, things that are not currently available to humans, things that humans are in desperate need of.